Muslim extremists attack the United States because they hated our freedom. Osama bin Laden declared a holy war against the United States in a fatwa signed by Osama. Osama bin Laden stated that his motives were Western support for attacking Muslims in Somalia, supporting Indian oppression against Muslims in Kashmir, the Jewish aggression against Muslims in Lebanon, and the presence of U.S. troops in Saudi Arabia, and also the support of Israel by the United States. After the 1991 Gulf War, the U.S. maintained a presence of 5,000 troops stationed in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia holds the holiest sites in Islam. Many Muslims were upset of the military presence. Osama said that for 7 years, the United States has been occupying the lands of Islam and its holiest place, humiliating its people and terrorizing their neighborhoods. Some scholars say that 9/11 was a strategic way to provoke a war with America. They also hated our democratic ideas. Essentially, our democratic ideas and secular concepts were infecting the Arab populace, giving their people ideas about freedom and revolution that their extremist leadership couldn't control. The leaders of the Arab world were falling behind with their fundamentalist tendencies, and they wanted to stop that nasty democracy concept from taking hold. The core issue for bin Laden was essentially only the restoration of the Sharia law would set things right in the Muslim world, and alternatives such as pan-Arabism, socialism, communism, democracy must be opposed.
Prior, 1979, American embassy in Iran is stormed by Iranians and the embassy staff is taken hostage. 1988, passenger jet Pan Am Flight 103 is blown up by Muslim extremists over Lockerbie, Scotland, killing 270 people. The first war was in Iraq in 1991. Then bombing started to occur. In 1993, 18 U.S. troops were killed in Somalia. In 1993, 5 U.S. people were killed and hundreds injured in a bomb planting by Muslim extremists in the World Trade Center. In 1995, a car bomb planted in Saudi Arabia killed 5 Americans and injured 30. The U.S. embassies in Kenya and Tanzania are bombed by Muslim extremists in 1988. Deering, 4 passenger airlines departed from airports in the East Coast in the early mornings of September 11th. 8:46 a.m., American Airlines Flight 11 crashes at roughly 466 miles per hour into the north face of the North Tower of the World Trade Center, between floors 93 and 99. 9:03 a.m., Flight 175 crashes at 590 miles per hour into the south face of the South Tower of the World Trade Center, between floors 77 and 85. 9:37 a.m., Flight 77 crashes into the western side of the Pentagon at 530 miles per hour. Flight number 93 was headed towards the White House. During that attempt, some of the passengers tried to regain control, but the plane crashed into a field, killing all 44 people aboard, including the 4 hijackers. No one on the ground was injured. After September 13, 2001, the White House announces that there is overwhelming evidence that the terrorist leader Osama bin Laden is being behind the attacks. March 19th, 2003, the U.S. invades Iraq. July 22nd, 2003, Saddam's son Uday and Qusay are killed in the U.S. raid in Mosul, Iraq. August 31st, 2010, the 7-year war in Iraq comes to an end at the order of President Obama. The president said that the U.S. needs to focus on issues on the home front, explaining it had already fulfilled its obligations to Iraq. December 21st, 2010, after 9 months of political infighting, Iraq's parliament approves in the new government, the more averted throwing into the nation into constitutional crisis. Finally, on May 2nd, 2001, Osama bin Laden was killed by the U.S. Navy SEALs team.
After being shuffled around the United States at 9 p.m. the day of the attack, President George Bush presented a speech about what had occurred earlier that day. During this speech, he famously said, "Terrorist attacks can shake the foundations of our biggest buildings, but they cannot touch the foundation of America. These acts shatter steel, but they cannot dent the steel of American resolve." For nearly 1 year after the attack, workers spent many hours removing debris and recovering bodies that were found in the rubble. While this went on, officials were debating the best way to rebuild the World Trade Center. It was decided that in the space which contained the buildings there was to be a memorial. This memorial was referred to as Ground Zero. In September of 2011, it was dedicated to all the victims of the terrorist attack. In October of 2001, the first military operations were launched to find the group that was responsible for the attacks. This group was known as Al-Qaeda, and their leader, Osama bin Laden. Despite anti-terrorist measures, many American citizens continued to feel uneasy for years. After the initial attack on 9/11, according to a study, nearly half of all Americans reported symptoms of stress and depression. After the attacks, many thousands of Americans lost loved ones on September 11th. Millions more watched the horrifying news coverage of the attacks and looked at the wrenching photographs in the newspapers and listened to heartbreaking interviews with firefighters, survivors, and those related to the victims, feeling that, at least in some way, the trauma of the day was theirs too.
After the attacks on 9/11, our country has made major changes to its daily life. Increased security efforts around airports, other high-quality events, places, and even people. To this day, people still have trouble understanding what the attacks meant because it was one of the first real experiences with tragedy and large-scale loss in the U.S. Also, civilians today are paying close attention when hearing more news about terrorism, war, and conflicts abroad. Not all of the outcomes of September 11th have made the U.S. worse, and in some ways it has made our country stronger. Citizens have started to take pride in being an American by showing more patriotism. Best of all, we have increased the appreciation for our public servants and military forces. One of the everyday changes that people see, dramatic changes in airport security. Prior to the attacks on 9/11, getting on a plane meant showing up to the gate 15 minutes beforehand. Today, travelers must arrive at the airport an hour before their flight, with a ticket with their correct name, show a valid ID, and submit to security. When going through airport security, there's a list of rules to follow. No liquids, no shoes, no belts, no coats, and your bag must fit in the X-ray machines. As your baggage is passing through inspection, the traveler must go through the metal detector, the body scan, or, if you look shady, have a physical search done by the TSA agent. In 2001, President Bush enacted the Patriot Act, a tool used to intercept and obstruct terrorism. This led to a revision of the nation's surveillance laws that allowed the government to spy on its citizens. People's phones, conversations, and emails were monitored and recorded. Some supported this, and others felt it went too far. One person who objected was Edward Snowden, a CIA employee who stole classified information from his workplace and exposed it to the world. He was trying to divulge the illegal aspect of the Patriot Act so that the average American would understand the extent of their loss of civil liberties. These changes have made our country much more secure. We are now aware of the terrorists and their threats and can stop them before they cause more pain and suffering.